two, one, two, three.
Hello and welcome to Ithaca DSA Presents. I am Maribel Tineo and I am speaking with Jason Leifer. Jason is an attorney and Dryden Town supervisor. He's been involved in politics since 2008 when he joined the Dryden Town board. Jason has been interested in telecommunications policy since law school, so when he joined Dryden's Town board in 2008, one of the first things he did was help Dryden and a local company, Clarity Connect, apply for a grant that led to the installation of a wireless internet system to cover underserved areas of Dryden. Since then, Jason has been a leader in the local effort to bring municipal broadband to Tompkins County. What should we expect in terms of challenges?
What we're talking about with municipal or public broadband is a infrastructure. We're talking about fiber at the delivering speeds of 100 megabits up and down to homes and businesses and schools, basically the end user. It's owned by the municipality, and that's either going to be a city, it could be a county, could be a town or a village. And the business model could be done one of two ways. You can have one where the municipality provides the service, much like many of them already provide water, sewer. Some provide electrical service, like your police and fire services, things like that. So everything is done by the municipality. Or the other model is the municipality owns the infrastructure, but then allows private companies to offer the service, just using the municipally owned infrastructure. So the people of the community still own the assets in that model, but the city or town or whatever is allowing some other entity to provide the actual connection between the home or the business to the World Wide Web, and they differentiate themselves by price or maybe other services that they offer in addition to the connection to the internet. Whereas the vertically owned, where the municipality does everything, they're providing the connection. And typically, if people want to do something like phone service or video or whatever, they're going to get that on their own through like for telephone, like say Vonage, which is I think they're still around, but they're a internet-based phone service, or you'll get your video from Netflix or something like that. With the open system, there might be one company that does just internet, while another one might do internet and video, and another one might give you internet plus some coupons someplace. But and both models have worked in the across the country. It just depends. A lot of that is actually which way a community chooses to go has to do with politics, which is one of the I guess like I think you said in your introduction, it's probably the biggest barrier for getting municipal broadband done is the political aspect of it. And the idea, though, because we're doing this in Dryden, we're doing the vertically owned model where we're going to own and operate the system. And we chose to do that because we want to reap all the municipality to reap all the benefit of the system. We don't want, at least at this stage, we don't want to farm out the customer service aspect of this. One of the things in Dryden is that people who have the current providers, one of them is Spectrum, and many of them aren't happy with the service, and they know that if they're getting it from the town, that because ultimately the folks who are elected to the town board are responsible for it, they have recourse. they can, hire a new board.
Hmm.
And, so they know that we'll be a lot more attentive to their needs than a private company that knows that they're the only game in town. And that's really one of the, we did a household survey where people said that if we could charge exactly the same amount of spectrum, offer the same service, and they'd switch to a town system. So it's not just about the better technology that a new municipal system will offer above all these other competitors. It's that they know that we're going to provide a better service because we're already in the business of providing service to people for not a profit motive, but we do it because that's what we're hired to do. I mean, and the thing is, in Dryden, and I think any new municipal system, and including ones that already exist, they really differentiate themselves from the older corporate models because the newer systems are all installing fiber to the home. Companies like Spectrum, which bought Time Warner's old system, they may have fiber on the road, but there is not fiber to the home connection. So what goes from the road to the home is usually old copper and coaxial, but it's not fiber. And then it's a similar problem that any company would run into when they're using, like if they're going to be down in a city, for instance, and it's one of the problems in New York City, actually. Some of the buildings are so old, it's hard to get fiber inside those buildings. But for a company that's got existing wiring, whereas a newer company that is building a new system, may choose different technology to reach all the residents, but they don't have to worry about the legacy technology and replacing that. And so you're going to be able to offer a better product, whether it's in an urban environment or a rural environment.
Yeah. Well, I think it's amazing that you mentioned that beyond the benefit of a better service, there's greater accountability if broadband is municipally owned, and that there's also more revenue that the municipality can actually use and redistribute back to the citizens. And so I think those are two amazing benefits of municipal broadband access. And I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about, specifically in Dryden, because you've been at this for a long time, and that's why we're so happy to have you be the person speaking about this. How did you where is Dryden right now in its process of achieving municipal broadband? What have been some of the challenges that you faced, and what have been some of the strategies that you have used as town supervisor to get the support? I heard you say that people understand the benefits of municipal broadband and would replace the private companies in a heartbeat. How does that happen? Why Dryden? And how did you achieve the level of support that's necessary for Dryden to make progress in this area, and what remains to be done?
Okay, so where we're at right now is that we completed a household survey in 2019. That's where we found out what our expected what's called a take rate, so that we can project the financial viability of the system. We had about 90% of the people who took the survey said that they would switch to a municipally owned system. Okay, and we hadn't told them what type of business model yet, whether it would be an open access or like I said, the vertically owned where the town runs everything.
And you said 90%?
It's 90% of the people
Wow.
would switch from, and most of those folks had Spectrum. There are some that had Frontier DSL. There's some that use satellite. There's some that were with the Clarity Wireless, because all of those systems, while they'll give access to the internet, they have different technical challenges too. And it's not, the slowest one of them all is DSL, because that's really an old legacy technology. And I think Frontier is they're not even investing in it anymore. And I think that they're trying to replace it with newer systems. But things like Clarity, while it's faster than DSL, when they have it with their wireless system, just like Spectrum, when water gets in their wires, depending on the weather, it can affect the reliability. So we did that first in 2019, found out the support for it. Then we engaged Hun Engineering as our, the contractor to guide us to develop a plan for the system. So we've now developed a 6-phased plan, which, depending on how many people sign up, it could be accelerated. And we have a basic design, and we've been applying for grants since the end of last year. And now with all this new federal money coming in, we're going to be, like, for instance, under the CARES Act, this newest stimulus piece, a lot of that money is actually earmarked by Congress for broadband development and deployment. And then in addition to that, the bill also included $100 billion to cover other, grants in addition to the basic COVID relief for broadband construction and deployment, and also for some subsidies because, like you mentioned earlier, there's the $15 plan that the state is trying to require. But some of the federal money is really meant to allow current providers to provide a $15 plan, but they're still going to get, the full revenue for that subscriber. So if say they're having somebody pay $15 a month for 100 up, 100 down, but they charge somebody else 80, they can apply to make up some of that, the dollar amount above 15. I don't know if they get all of it, but so it's not like the internet providers giving anything away, but they are only going to be billing, low income subscribers $15 for a certain type of plan. But what we've been doing, with all these grant applications, we've also been preparing to bond out the project, even if we didn't get grants, because the financial model and, based on the take rate we expect would support us bonding it out too, because the reality is once you have revenue coming in, it's going to pay off the bonds. The projected time frame for paying off the full cost of the project, which is about $15 million, if we had to bond it all out, is about 15 years. And that's with between 2,000 and 4,000 subscribers. Of course, the more subscribers we get, the quicker we could pay it off. So, and the thing is you can do that because you're not trying to satisfy, Wall Street, for instance. You're just trying to build a system to deliver a service at the best cost possible and with the best technology possible for your residents. It's really, you run it really the same way you run a water system or a sewer system. You're not in that to make money. You're in that to make sure people get clean water, and also and that the water going, being the waste going into the lake, for instance, is not poisoning the lake. It's so all we're trying to do with an internet system is deliver the best internet service possible at the lowest price. And once you pay off the construction costs of the system, because fiber is going to last 100 plus years, then you can just lower the price, or if you choose to keep the price a little higher than the lowest it could be, you can roll that extra revenue into the community. And right now, when you write a check to Spectrum, it's going out, it's going somewhere else. It's not staying in the community. And I think people like that aspect of the municipal system too, because the money stays here, whether it's just simply through a lower price, because then you get to, you're obviously going to have extra money to spend elsewhere, or if it's going to be used to fund other parts of local government, maybe you can lower property taxes, which is something that affects everybody in New York State. And other communities are like Tompkins County, for instance, is in the very beginning stages of figuring out how to solve the problem for towns and the city, outside of Dryden, because we're already a step ahead of them. We have pretty much a shovel-ready project, and that's why we're really hoping to get our backbone portion of it started this calendar year, so that we can then start hooking up customers by next year.
Wow. Well, I could be wrong, but it sounds to me like this $15 a month proposal from the state, it's analogous to what's happening with our healthcare system, right? We have the single payer model, right, which Bernie Sanders was a proponent of. And then you have, the Pelosi's and Biden's supporting an expansion of the Affordable Care Act, which still keeps the money in the hands of private companies, doesn't, and it basically, by expanding the coverage, basically it's a handout to private companies. It's expanding the market base for those private companies. This is what it sounds like to me when you talk about municipal broadband versus, the state proposal to give expand access by giving people this low giving low income people access to a $15 a month plan. I mean, so can you just give us a sense for those of us who are sort of trying to understand all the different pieces to this? Because, one of the things that I mentioned before is that there's Dryden, right? With Jason Leifer's leadership, has been working on this for a while now. Now there's in places like, the city of Ithaca, there's growing support and interest in municipal broadband. And you have many progressive organizations now making it part of their campaign. And then you have the state proposing this $15 a month plan, which doesn't necessarily seem to be fully consistent with the idea of a municipal broadband. And then you have Biden, at the federal level, including the expansion of broadband access as part of the infrastructure. Where do you see this going, and how does it all fit in together?
Okay, so the new initiatives coming out from the federal government seem to be supporting municipal broadband above everything else. Okay, so because even the president's mentioned that supporting municipal broadband is a priority. The $15 a month access is really a Band-Aid intended to allow people who live in places that have infrastructure already, but who just simply can't afford to connect, to be able to connect. It's very much like the low cost phone plans that were mandated by the FCC, so that people could just have a basic phone connection just for emergency services, or like with cable television, where you have this basic cable plan so that people could have access to just like local news and some basic television programs. So that's really where that fits in, but it doesn't help build new infrastructure. And that's where you have this urban and rural divide, even though it's not, quite as black and white as that. So typically the issue in rural towns like Dryden and, Enfield and Groton and Newfield and Danby and all, they don't have the fiber infrastructure built out. So people can't even get internet service that would be considered broadband. They might have some DSL access, because DSL is a technology that rode on the back of the copper phone lines. They might have access to satellite, but satellite is not reliable. And I'm, talking about, you can't even talk about Elon Musk's, Starlink, I think is what he calls it. You can't even talk about that, because if you actually, I have a friend who lives in Connecticut who got an offer for that, and it's $100 a month. So that's not going to be offered. It's not of any use to people who don't have more than $15 a month to spend on internet. So and other satellite providers, they have latency issues that would make it impossible to do what we're doing right now over Zoom. So, and also you're not going to be able to use, because one of the reasons why you have towns like ours talking about building our own fiber system is because you're trying to force the cable companies to build out their cable systems under television franchise agreements, even though the television, the cable television uses the same exact infrastructure as the internet offered by, say, Spectrum and Charter and all these other cable companies across the country. It's proven ineffective to force build out. And this even occurs when you give these companies subsidies, which is really how it's been managed by New York State and the federal government for the past 30 years. They'll give public money to these private companies to build out internet systems. And what they tend to do is just throw the money into the existing infrastructure and upgrade people bits at a time who are already customers. They're not treating it the way it should have been treated from the beginning is the way the rural electrification happened under FDR almost 100 years ago. And that's really the difference between, the past policy and the current policy. President Biden is treating this like the rural electrification problem that happened in the 1920s and 30s. He's telling, municipalities, we support you doing this because, frankly, big business has failed, and the smaller businesses that are doing something about it in some cases. And in some cases, here in Tompkins County, you have some small internet providers like Clarity or Ontario Trumansburg Telephone. They are installing fiber to the home, but they're not going in any place where they would be forced to compete with Spectrum because they're not big enough. Whereas a municipality is big enough to challenge Spectrum. And the divide about like rural, it's an infrastructure issue mostly, but we still have the low income problems too. In the city of Ithaca, you still want to build a municipal system because there's really no meaningful competition, and there's no fiber to the home system that's widespread in the city. So I think that the city representatives want to make sure that they support a municipal system of some sort here. The technology they choose is up to them. There's many ways to do it, whether it's wired or wireless, but you need to have some meaningful competition down here, because even though like the RFI is on a different system, I think it said Spark Fiber as for Fiber Spark, they may be in some neighborhoods here, but they're not across the city, and they're Spectrum doesn't really pay attention to them because they know that they're not big enough to be a threat to their business. So that's why you don't see Spectrum upping their speeds or lowering their price. And they don't feel any pressure to do better. They will feel pressure in a town like Dryden to do better, because we're going to be offering newer technology that blows their speeds away. And if they really want to challenge what we're doing, their only choice is to upgrade their entire system. And the thing is what I've said this before, if they would have done that from the beginning and just charged a reasonable price, we wouldn't be talking about building our own system. But they've never wanted to really be a partner in this. And if you have to keep dragging a company like that, kicking and screaming, into providing a service that people they tell them that they want it, and they're not even interested in doing that, then that's why we're stepping in as a municipality and saying, well, we're done negotiating with you. We're just going to do it because we know we can do it, and we know we can do it better than you.
Wow.
Yeah, and you've seen that happen across the country too. Because I know, in cities like Chattanooga, for instance, or Raleigh, North Carolina, you have municipally owned systems that have challenged the corporate systems. They consistently get better ratings, and in North Carolina, the Raleigh system was so good, the Time Warner successfully lobbied the state legislature in North Carolina to prohibit more municipal broadband systems from being built. And that situation also exists in places like Pennsylvania, where a town or a city or even a county cannot build a system and offer service to customers.
Right.
Because lobbyists were successful in preventing it.
Right. And hence the political opposition being one of the
Right.
main challenges. So we have a couple of minutes, and I want to make sure you can tell the audience ways that they can learn more about this and how they can be involved. But I want to emphasize again, one of the things I really appreciated about your discussion is that you point to benefits beyond the actual service, right? Like, yes, people will have better services, but beyond that, it has a democratizing effect.
Yep.
When people actually can hold their officials accountable for the services that they get, because
Right.
it's municipally owned and run, right? And I think that's super important to mention. And the fact that it also means that the revenue can be redistributed to the people in the form of social services and social programs. So why don't you take a minute to speak to maybe what are some other major benefits of municipal broadband?
One of the benefits of it is it's one of the things that we can do I guess, equalize access to information and even opportunity. Much in the way that phone service did, and even electrical service did. Like I said, about 100 years ago. And the reason is because we actually rely on, even before COVID. Students would rely on the internet to do homework projects. They would, a lot of government services, you access them through the internet. Businesses have used it as a sales platform, so somebody can start something up in their garage and use the internet to market their service or product or whatever. And if you lived in an area where you couldn't get reliable service, you couldn't do that. You didn't have the same opportunity as somebody um, who did have access to good service. And I had a friend. They moved out of Dryden because her husband's actually helping, working for one of the counties up. I think it's Madison County, but they're building a county internet service similar to what we're doing in Dryden. But they lived up in the hills in Dryden, and her internet service was so bad until they allowed Clarity to build a tower on their property that she had difficulty with her freelance writing work, just getting things to her, the magazines and publishers and things that she worked for.
How can people learn more about this and get involved?
All right. So first off, you can follow what we're doing in Dryden. That's a real quick primer. We have our studies put up. We also have our broadband committee meetings publicly noticed. We do them every 2 weeks, Friday mornings. The county just started its own broadband committee, and all the towns are participating. So pay attention to the county legislature's website for that. And also with TCOG, it's the Council of Governments in Tompkins County, but there is a group there working with county planning on this county study for municipal internet service, and learning both what those models mean and what the technology is all about is extremely important. These meetings are all public. You can attend, you can submit questions, contact your local elected officials and your town boards and village boards and even in the city, and tell them that you're thinking about this and you want to see what they're going to do about it so that everybody has equal access at a decent price. The system that's built out, and no matter what town it is going to be around for well beyond my lifetime and everyone else's lifetime. When it goes in. Fiber lasts 100 years or more. So you want to do it, you want to at least get the foundation right, and you need to have the right people with the right information in office to do that.
This has been Ithaca DSA Presents. I am Maribel Tineo, and I just spoke with Jason Leifer, attorney, Dryden Town supervisor, and longtime activist and supporter of public broadband access.
1, 2, 3.